I once had two employees who I thought couldn't stand each other. Every day there was another disagreement, another complaint, another reason why they couldn't work together. At first, I thought it was my job to stop the conflict. I eventually realized my job was to understand it. Hey, welcome to the Mentoring Moments with the Genuine Mentor. I'm Steve. After 25 years of leading people, I've learned that leadership isn't lived in perfect moments, it's lived in uncomfortable moments. This is one of those stories about uncomfortable moments. Here at the Genuine Mentor, we have honest conversations about leadership, personal growth, and what is really takes to elevate the human experience. Let's get into today's topic. So today I have a story about two associates. Uh, this was quite a few years ago. I was a sales manager, and at the time, sales manager still controlled the inside people. And I had two inside folks that dealt with our walk in customers and so on. They really struggled getting along. They really battled at just nitpicky little things. They didn't. They acted like they didn't like each other. They bashed each other. Made snide comments. Um, things like, "Well, so and so doesn't work as hard as I do," or "So and so's, always on the phone," or you know, it just back and forth. And I was still pretty new in the leadership role, and so I took my approach, and I would have one-on-ones with them and ask them what's going on, and try to smooth things out. Sometimes that kind of seemed to work a little bit. It was interesting though that there was a definite rub going on with the two of them, and it was just something I didn't feel like I had the knowledge or information on how to work through this one. So um, I started asking some other people and got their opinions of what they were seeing, and you know, tried to trying to self-educate myself, if you want to call it that. And this went on for several months. And finally, there was a point when I knew I needed to do something. I needed to uh, fix a problem, and honestly, I was looking at should I fire one of them so we don't have this conflict. But I thought, okay, I've got a great HR person, many years of experience, and I ended up going to her and we had a chat, and we kind of talked about what I was seeing, what was going on, and she decided to kind of do some of her own observations, and just without being suspicious, she tried to be around, watch things, and kind of got her view of what was happening. And then we had some more meetings and conversations about it. But what came down was, well, maybe we should get them together in a meeting. And I my first comment was, together, both of them at the same time? And she goes, well, yeah, that's how we'll resolve conflict. And I can tell you that initially, my hands went up, and I I'm a person, and still to this day, I try to avoid conflict. I don't like to get in arguments and deal with that stuff. So anyway, we decided to have the meeting, and it really taught me a whole bunch about leadership, and taught me how I needed to work better in that situation. Um, we we sat down. I I was behind my desk, and the HR person was next to me, and the two people were sitting on the other side, and they kind of was, you could see some tense moments and kind of see that this was uncomfortable for pretty much everybody in the room. Uh, but the HR person kind of asked me to hold back. She wanted me to observe. And I'm like, okay. And so she started the conversation and started off with something pretty basic. Hey, what's going on with the two of you? We're having some complaints of you two arguing and so on, and we need to resolve this. And it immediately started into conflict. It started into blame. It started into, well, so and so does this, and that irritates me, or so and so doesn't do this, or, and it's just this. It became this back and forth, an argument going on, and it wasn't anything that surprised me. I figured that was what was going to happen, was we would see a big argument. So as this kind of went on, I found it interesting is eventually it moved, and I have to tell you, it felt like a long period of time because I was uncomfortable, but eventually it started to move towards, uh, well, if so and so wouldn't do this, maybe I wouldn't do this, or a little bit of negotiating back and forth, how they felt and the things that irritated each other, and why. And all of a sudden there's conversation, and HR made one comment about, well, now you're starting to see the things that are bothering each of you. How could we possibly resolve some of this? And so that perpetuated into more things that were defined as resolutions. And they started saying, well, I will try and do this if so and so can try and do this. And they started to agree. They started to make comments with each other about how um, they would try, they would work on this, they would work on this. And you could immediately start to see that dynamic change of what was happening with the two of them. The tension seemed to lighten. Um, I think they, I think they vented. They got some of their frustrations out, and I think that started to solve some things. They were able to talk about some of the problems they were having, and before you know it, there was a few smiles coming, and eventually, there was kind of a handshake and a slight hug. And for me, I can tell you that I never said very much in that meeting, and I sat there going, what just happened? It started off exactly what I thought would happen, a big argument, but it actually worked itself out, and there was resolution in the end of it without me actually doing all the work. And so those two leave, and I'm talking with HR and communicating about, my thoughts, and how did this happen and what happened. And that's where I first started to learn about listening. And again, not just listening to hear things, but listening to understand what was going on. And I think that's a key factor in a lot of problems that go in the workplace. Uh, we hear things, we see things, and management. As I was in management, I always believed this, that management only sees snapshots of the real problem. And this was an example of, I didn't work side by side with them all day long. I didn't see everything. So I saw snapshots. So then I go to other associates to try and fill the gaps of those snapshots. Well, you end up getting a picture painted for you, and then you have that in your head. that may not always be 100% correct until you actually dig into it and listen and understand the real problem. That real problem that came out here was two people that were probably frustrated in their life, had some personal things happening, and I just think they just naturally like to jab at each other, and it kind of went south and turned into a bad deal. So anyway, things got better. Were they perfect? No. There still was a few other follow-up meetings and different things, but things got better. Things were working. And anyway, I just wanted to share this with you. I thought that was a profound moment in my career as I was moving forward and kind of learning things. And I've always thought back on it. But the first of all, I'd like to thank you for spending some time with me. And then second, the mentoring moments, this is what they're going to be. They're going to be stories from my life, things like this that I dealt with, things that helped me grow. And if today's mentoring moments made you think, I'd encourage you to subscribe to this channel and join me for future conversations. I'd also invite you to join genuinementor.com. Here's where you'll find some additional leadership resources, some trainings, some tools designed to help you grow. But before you leave, I'd love to hear your comments, your experiences, your thoughts. And as time goes on and I get through some of my experiences in life, I would like to hear your experiences in life. And if you sent me something that helped change your leadership career, I'd love to hear about it. But anyway, these are all great things, and again, thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it. Have a great day.